Welcome to Tell the Truth, every Thursday, 11 o'clock here on LinkedIn. I'm Pete Montfrey, your not so humble host. I've been called the curmudgeon, the great curmudgeon of marketing. I've worked with household brands and smaller and growing companies for probably over 30 years, 32 years to be precise. And on Tell the Truth, we like to kind of take the veil off of marketing and sales and help you make better decisions when it comes to growing your company and how you manage marketing sales. How do you get it to work? How do you hire the right people? Today we've got an absolute master of sales management and recruiting, Peter Cotton. He's been doing this for even longer than me, 44 years. So the one person I know who's been doing the same thing continually longer than I have. Top salesman, top sales manager, Fortune 500. You can find him at besttalent.com. Amazing guy, Peter Cotton. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Pete. Couple of quick corrections. It's 45 years,
Oh my goodness.
and my website is bestsalestalent.com.
Bestsalestalent.com. What did I say?
Best
Something.
talent.
Oh, yes. It says right in front of me what it is. My brain blanked it out. So that's Thursdays for you. Welcome to the program, and it's good to see you.
Good to
You
see
know,
you, Pete.
I like our topic today. There's a huge problem going on, isn't there, for employers?
Yes, there is.
Tell me about that.
People are complaining they can't find qualified candidates, and there's all sorts of reasons as to why that's happening. I'd be happy to get into them.
Absolutely. I think, and that's what we're here for. I hear a lot from candidates how they can't even get through this crazy arm's length system. In fact, I have a young son who's really just entering the job market and finding a very different one than when I was 20. And so
Hmm.
lots of C shift changes going
Yeah.
on. So, where to begin? There's probably multiple episodes worth of material here. But I think the big one is, if I'm trying to put a team together, and I definitely have colleagues that are in that business putting teams together, what's going on there? It's getting to the desperation level.
Yeah. Well, let's go back a ways to try to analyze just why this is being so
Right?
difficult.
How'd we get here?
Yeah. I looked up something that I thought was really interesting. Do you know what the birth rate was in 1790?
You got me on the one thing I don't know.
You don't have that on the tip of your tongue, do you?
No, not that one.
They had families of 6 children on average.
Wow.
And that's probably because they needed help around the farm and, you know, all the chores to do, et cetera, et cetera. But as the years have progressed since 1790, the birth rate has actually been going downward. Now, I'm a baby boomer. So if you look at, for instance, the 1950 birth rate, there were 24.3 people for every born out of every thousand. And when you come down to 2020, there's 11.9 per thousand, which is less than half of what it was in 1950. So right there, we have less people entering the job market. And
Just in general.
yeah, and we have a lot of baby boomers who've left or are leaving the job market, which creates a lot of voids.
Well, that was one of my questions too. You hear about the Great Resignation, which is seems to be a problem across all job strata, but it's part of it here, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's a result of the COVID situation. You know, a lot of people had time to reflect and think about their careers during the time that they were hunkered down. And a lot of them decided, you know what, this job isn't exactly what I want to do. I want to do something more or better or different. I want more responsibility, or I want to have less responsibility. We've had some
Sure.
people actually leave the workforce and become, the mother for the house or the father of the house raising the kids. Um, so a lot of people have reevaluated what they want to do, and many of them have in fact resigned. Some of them with no job to go to. They want a little breathing time, want a little vacation time. Maybe some want to travel, and now they're
Sure.
reassessing the job market.
Well, and
And right now,
if they're good, they're high earners, so they have some money put away and they can coast for a while.
yeah, well, and but that doesn't look too good to a prospective employer when they return to work,
Right.
right? So it's interesting to see, and a lot of companies are finding that the candidates who are qualified, number one, aren't looking. You got an unemployment rate of about 3.6. So if you look at it another way, that means that what, 96.4% of the workforce is working. And the good people typically are not out of work. They have jobs. So when a company posts a job on their website or on Indeed, they're not getting what they want. They're getting everybody who'd like to be in that job, but has none of the qualifications.
Right. The best people, they're just not looking. They're not
Correct.
expending outward energy to find that ad, to respond to that.
Right.
Ridiculous in most cases, the job descriptions. So, I'm coming at this, I have to admit, I'm at a disadvantage because I've never actually applied for a job because I've always been kind of self-employed from the beginning. So, it's always kind of funny when someone asks me, interview tips, not your guy. But this this way of going about candidates and the systems involved and the just the job descriptions themselves. I mean, everybody's looking for a unicorn, and this is kind of on top of sales has always been a hard function, a hard, expensive, painful function to fill. Just because people talk a good game, but they don't bring the goods.
Well, that happens in a small percentage of times, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to me.
Um, on the other hand, you could say, well, employers talk a great game about how good their company is and what the great company culture is, and the person goes to work there and they find out that's not at all true, or the job that was described to them is not what they're asked to do. So
Yes.
there's issues on both sides of the equation, but putting the best foot forward on both sides. First of all, an employer who's looking for people who just posts jobs is not going to find the best, as you said. And the reason is the best people are currently employed, happy where they are, thought well of where they work, they're doing a good job, they're not paying attention to ads, they don't have a resume put together, they're not contacting recruiters. So it's a recruiter's responsibility to go out into the marketplace and find them and apprise them of what might be a better opportunity than what they now have,
Hmm.
and get into a conversation to see if we can get them to consider making a change. And that's what happens.
It's a marketing and sales job.
Oh, indeed. And in the world of placing sales management and marketing people, we as recruiters have to be every bit as good or better
That's right.
than the employers who are hiring managers who are sales types and the candidates. So it takes one to know one, we use in the
Yeah,
lingo.
I
And
saw that.
I was a salesman and a sales manager. I know what goes on out there. I'm not blind to that.
You didn't fall off the turnip truck yesterday. I'm that way with marketing and marketing agencies. It's like I know every way you've twisted every word and every scam that there is. It's just I'm really a hard guy to bullshit, and I help clients find agencies sometimes, which I think is great fun. But I've also hired salespeople and bet my money, and during a time when I was younger and building a bigger business, and really I found a guy that was very good at having lunch, but he was not good at closing. And now we have all kinds of assessments and we have a totally different dynamic. Um, and the way that we used to hire people, it looks completely different from today. But also the actual people are different. Like different generations have different expectations when it comes to what's important to them in terms of benefits packages, for example. They might value flexible schedule more than they value, total health care. I don't know, some other
Well,
common benefit, life insurance.
all may be true, but I've heard many a story of an employer who said they met a sales candidate who was good at lunch, said all the right things, firm handshake, good eye contact, yada, 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 and didn't deliver the goods. Well, part of the responsibility of selecting the right person is knowing what to look for and what to ask.
Sure.
And most employers have never been trained in how to interview candidates. Um, it's just
So
the way it is.
it's kind of haphazard,
It's
off
seat
the
of the pants.
cuff, seat of the pants kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Or
how
they,
important is a recruitment plan then? I mean, I mean, should these companies be just like they might have a marketing plan or a sales plan? Should they have a recruiting plan?
well, it depends on the size of the company, of course,
Okay.
right? So um, the interview is really the key. And uh, as I said, they don't know what to ask, so they don't really find out what they need to find out. If they asked questions of a behavioral nature, they may find out a lot more than if they take answers that are um, an opinion or a credential or something like that. You know,
Right.
if you ask somebody, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Who the heck cares? He's going to give you an opinion.
Right. It's what they think they're good at, and they may
Right.
not even know how deep the pool is.
What's your best job, your worst job?
Right.
Anything that elicits an opinion is not going to help you determine whether the person does a good job. But asking behavioral based questions like, tell me about a time when you were challenged to find a major account, get in the door, capture the business, and bring home an order. Now you're going to hear a story of what a person has done. And you layer in follow-up questions to that. Who was it, the person that you spoke to? When was this? How many other people were involved? Did you get a team member involved? You know,
Right.
all
Stuff
these
that's kind of
layering
hard to
questions.
make up on the fly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So you can find out a lot more about a person through a behavioral interview. In fact, I teach behavioral interviewing, and I'm going to be offering a course in that for employers so that they can learn what recruiters use.
Wow. What's the name of the course?
I haven't thought up the
Yeah.
name.
Names are tough because I'm working on a course too, and it's to names keeps changing.
No, it's
So
going
I
to be
get it.
probably behavioral identification interviewing techniques.
Yeah, I think I think it's all in the questions you ask. Now, looking at, I just try to keep up with this area because I do interact with sales teams a lot, and one of the challenges as a marketing strategist is doesn't matter how good of a job I do if you can't sell your way out of a wet paper bag. None of us are going to be successful. So we do run across challenges in the sales team, um, and we have even run episodes on the phenomenon that I'll capture posts from Reddit on the marketing sub there where people are saying, I'm starting a marketing agency or I'm starting my consultancy. What is marketing? Where there's just a general lack of awareness of the field. And so a lot of business owners kind of know a lot about their business, and then they go to hire salespeople. They don't know the behaviors that they're looking for, and they're kind of susceptible to kind of being talked into things by people who are, many of the postings that I see say, I've just gotten a job at a Fortune 500 company as a marketing manager. Could someone give me a detailed idea of what this job entails? I mean, they're just utterly not qualified, but somehow they got through the interview process, right? So there's all of that going on. You got to see through that so the person has the best chance of bringing the ROI. I have a friend, Scott Ingram, that does a podcast called Sales Success Stories Podcast at Top One FM, and he interviews the top 1% of salespeople in the country. It's a great podcast. So, what are some other ways that employers are kind of dropping the ball here? It sounds like employers have this within their control. They just
Well, they
don't know
do,
it.
but some of them self-sabotage their hiring process.
Tell me about that. How do they do it? I bet I've done it.
Well, it starts with an attitude. If you go out in the lobby and meet somebody and you're not friendly towards them and warm and welcoming, and you're really brusque and very stern, you send off the wrong signal. You want to welcome a candidate to your company, and especially if it's a recruit. If it's somebody who's not looking for a job, you can't sit them down and say, fill out an application as soon as he gets there. He's
You
not
got to
going to do
woo
it.
them.
Yeah, correct. You got to seduce them, so to speak.
Seduce them. I like it. Like the
So to
sound of it.
speak. Yeah. So there are many things employers do. They take too long to get around to interviewing. Good candidates are just drifting away. They can't wait. They're not interested in waiting. They think it's rude to be postponed, delayed. Um, they don't show up. Believe this or not, this happens. They don't show up for interviews. They
The
don't call ahead to
employer
cancel.
doesn't. The employer
Right.
doesn't show up.
Right.
Woof. Boy,
They
that's
don't
a
call. They don't call to cancel. They come
that's a
up with some
sin.
excuse like I had to catch a flight, or I had, whatever the excuse is. They didn't call ahead to say I'm not going to be able to make it. That happens.
Wow. That's
Um,
amazing.
Gosh, there's so many things that they do.
Well,
Uh,
one part I would add is, I mean, I see things even right now. More and more people are kind of coming to us and saying, "Hey, they see that it's a marketing equation, and they're looking at the marketing equation, saying, look, how do we represent our company culture?" And so often the answer is, we're not really representing anything at all. Does that make any sense? Where they're just using some generic, or they're saying nothing. They're saying they're burying careers underneath a tab 6 places down, and then it just says one little paragraph of buzzwords and then somebody's email address. Or on the other hand, you go to the careers page, it says nothing about the job, but has a really long form to fill out. You know, that to me seems like sabotage. You need to be selling and
you're not going to get a recruit
managing the
that way.
perception of what it's like to work there. Yeah, because these guys are just like the prospect who could benefit and would buy if given the opportunity.
Right.
But
And if
they're
you put
not
too many
patient people.
barriers in their way, they won't buy.
Yeah, they're going to move on fast, and not showing up. Boy, that is a cardinal sin. Even on the other end, a sales guy that doesn't show up. If the guy doesn't show up for the interview, that's another wild
Of
card.
course.
So
Of
let me
course.
toss in a quick commercial. So you realize every Thursday we come on LinkedIn and we talk about these things. We have amazing guests like this. It's at 11 o'clock Central AM every single Thursday. And the strange thing about Thursdays is they just keep coming. So far, we have not run out of them. So really appreciate you being on the program today. You know what? Are assessments a reliable tool? That's a question that I get asked a lot, and I used to have a high belief in them. Sometimes I still do, but I wonder what you think about that.
If you're selling them, they have a great amount of validity.
If you're selling them, yeah,
If if you're the buyer, who has invested a lot of time and money in it, you believe in them.
sure,
If you're a candidate, they don't believe in them. And
interesting.
frankly, every time I come across a company that uses one, a year or two later, they toss it out and come up with another one because some new salesman came along who has a better idea as to how the assessment should go.
Right,
Um,
it's kind of a shiny object syndrome there.
right,
Well, I know
right.
I took a disc assessment, not the sales one, but I took it 20 years apart, and it did nail my personality, in my opinion. But it's so hard to predict that someone can sell. I'll throw out there what I learned, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. My idea was after trying this a lot in my agency, in the 90s, it became a thing where we were rather quick to hire and quicker to fire. Where the only way we could really tell, and even on our creative team, was kind of the same thing. It's like really hard to say we do the best we can to vet people, but then we put a trial period in, and we just have to work with you and find out if you got it in you, or if you could be trained. That's another thing, is I like to train salespeople the way that I want them to sell, which is essentially Sandler.
Sandler's a good program.
Yeah, I mean, that's what seems to work for us, so we would try to standardize that. But that's
Yeah.
just us, right? I mean, the mistakes I've made is letting it go way too long with somebody.
Yeah.
They're gonna
You know,
bring
I'm
in some.
I'm reminded that I should go back to something that we were covering earlier, which is why there aren't any qualified candidates, as employers say. Um, the other thing is, it's getting more and more expensive to go to college. It's outrageous. And
Yes.
some people just don't want to have the debt. They don't want to have to borrow money to go to school and have the lifetime to pay it back because it's very hard to pay it back. So a lot of kids aren't going to college. not as many as there used to be. There's still
Right.
a lot of college graduates. Don't get me wrong. Every year there are college graduates, but there are some people who are just not interested in doing that. They'd rather go off and make a living in a job they like, or a business that they created, or maybe they're interested in the trades. And there's nothing wrong with being in the trades.
Is it a
I know
hindrance when looking for a job in sales? Or does it matter?
what, not to have a college
Yeah.
education?
Say you don't have a college degree, does it
Well,
matter?
that's the thing, that the employers have these job descriptions that have must have, must have, must have, must have, a whole list of must haves, and they'll blow you out if you don't have a degree because they're checking boxes. They're not
Right.
really looking at what the person is capable of doing and what they have done. So it can get in the way for sure.
Well, and they're not even checking the boxes, an algorithm is, and this is just a whole nother can
So
of worms
that's
where
another thing.
the very best people, in fact, I should have dug it up before the interview today, but there's a study out there that shows that, they tested this idea that the people who fit the criteria the best somehow were the most excluded by the algorithm, which really is a problem in a human sense. We've all kind of been in that position. I think I was probably a teenager at the time, but needed a job, right? And
Mhm.
and it was a day when you could pick up the phone or walk into some place and talk to a human being and have an interview and that sort of thing. And now you're really at several arms length through an electronic system. And like my son, for example, I'm teaching him how to network. And so those job descriptions are wild. Like, good God, good luck finding those persons. I guess that's why you and I have great jobs and steady demand, is because we are almost those people in those job descriptions, but we're rare.
We are looking at what a purple squirrel is.
Yep.
That's what we describe as a candidate that a company has described in a job description that is most likely never to exist.
Yeah, and they want to pay him 40 grand a year.
Yeah, they want a 30-year-old who's got experience, who's also um, got an MBA,
Right.
and you know, you know where I'm going with that.
Right, yeah. Whereas a
Not a lot
size
of
36
life.
waist,
Yeah.
yeah, it's wild. So it's a way of sabotage, I think. It's like you're not, I think companies that skated along and when things were just not so competitive or these new factors didn't exist, they now are stepping back and saying, hey, this is an area that we need to think about. We've just been kind of letting it ride. And, the company I was talking about who has their careers section buried and has almost no information, not a human being to be found in any photos on the entire website, by the way. Uh, and they're engineers at school, but they're trying to find a pretty qualified type of engineer. And it is the primary thing that's keeping them from hitting their objective.
Yeah, and on the other side of the coin, I'm looking to fill some jobs currently, and LinkedIn is a great resource. And I've had people apply to the job through LinkedIn, and I look at their profile, and it's got their title, the name of the company, and the dates they served. No description whatsoever about what they did, what products they were involved with, who they sold to, nothing, which leaves the recruiter to say, is it worth investing the time to go research this company to figure out if that guy is the right guy? Or should I just
Right.
blast by him and find somebody else who does put that in their profile?
Yeah, that's interesting. Do see that a lot, and it's analogous to hiring creative people off of their portfolio, right? They show you this beautiful piece of work. You really have to get the average client's going to be like, "That's nice work." I'm going to be like, "Which part exactly did you do? Did you proofread it, and now it's in your portfolio? What again? It comes back to the behaviors, doesn't it? Like describe the actual behaviors. Now, even describing outcomes, letters of references, calling references, none of this really moves the needle anymore. It's all become kind of pointless. So you're saying
That's
ask
because
better questions.
the business about making reference calls, a lot of companies will just verify a person worked there. That they won't tell you anything else.
Nope, there's too much
So
liability.
yeah, so I talked to a guy this morning um, who applied for a position, and he listed one job, one title, it was the last 3 or 4 years, the name of the company, which I'd never heard of, and that was it. He had one thing listed on his profile. And he
Hmm.
called me on the phone to follow up that I got it. And I said, I don't know what you do. You haven't explained it. What have you done prior to the last 3 years? And he said, I wiped my profile clean. And I said, really? Why did you do that? And he said, there are too many jobs.
Hmm.
Now, what does that tell you?
He's getting bombarded by recruiters.
No, he has way too many jobs. And when
Hmm.
you really delve into it and
Oh,
get a
I
real
see.
resume, he's got too many short-term jobs at different companies, different
Yeah,
industries.
that doesn't
Everything's
occur to
different.
me because I've been with one company my whole adult life, the
Yeah.
one I started.
This person was a
So you're
real
just
job
saying they
hopper.
can't really? They're job skipping to an extreme level. I did see a post somewhere today about somebody who had 78 job listings
Whoa.
on their LinkedIn, and they're uh, 10 years out of school, I believe, and so it's pretty extreme. Yeah, I don't know how that works out either, but if people want to reach you, obviously we've put your link in here in your on LinkedIn, and of course bestsalestalent.com. I think the world needs people like us who have seen the entire movement of the industry, and we know the intricacies of those, all of the pieces and how they're moving. I mean, we could spend a whole hour talking about how this newest work generation, if you give them yesterday's benefits package, they don't care. That's not what they're interested in. It's really becoming a different world out there. And I think employers, if you want to be competitive, you're going to have to embrace the changes and take it seriously, probably bring in some expertise, but you're going to have to do your behaviors too. And there's a lot of factors that leads me to say you'd probably need some kind of plan, especially
And
if it's something that's limiting your growth.
don't drag your feet. That's another problem. They take too long to interview.
Oh,
While they're while
yes.
they're thinking about a candidate's getting another offer and he's off the market.
Right, and you've got 6 layers of management to get this guy through, and then you're going to say, hey, while you're at it, if you don't mind creating us a complete sales plan with projections into the next 4 years, that would be great. Um, it's surprising. It's like, look, man, it's a human being. You know, they're either going to be telling you the truth, or most of them are going to embellish a little bit. Um, Sharpen up your questioning skills. Bring in expertise if you need it. And do you agree with, I mean, I think you have to work with people just for at least some period of time, just to really see them in action and see how they do. Maybe have them shadow your best salespeople, you know, uh, whom I
That should be
hope you have
part of
modeled.
that should be part of the interviewing process. If you're unsure, you could have a rep right in the field with an existing rep as part of the interview and
Hmm.
have the rep report back what this candidate's behavior was, what his questions were. When I was a
That's
sales
great
rep
stuff.
for GAF, I had a guy ride with me and he said, how many calls do you make a day? And I said, well, they're short calls, so I can make anywhere between 8 and 12. And he said, how many? Why are you doing so many? You'll upset the apple cart for the rest of us. I thought that was interesting. He also asked me what day I took off to play golf or go to the movies. And I
Hmm.
said, I don't play golf, but if I went to the movies, I'd go on the weekend. He said, you don't take off a day or an afternoon, middle of the week to go to a movie? I said, no. So I got back to the office and I told my boss the story. He said, well, we're not going to hire that guy.
Wow. Interesting. Now, my gut would say to pay that person for that time. Um, but yeah, I think you have to put the time in, and you have to be able to pull the trigger, and make decisions, and you might have to uh, really work on being more competitive, and that doesn't necessarily mean higher salary anymore. The work from home benefits, the flexible time, the paid time off, the things that they were sort of important before, but they've become front and center now, because I mean, I think the younger people, they might have little kids, for example, or they might need that flex time. That might be the thing,
That's what I
right?
was saying. That's what I was saying before. Some people have reassessed, and remote work is very attractive, particularly if you have small children. You know, you have to take them to school, or you have to take them to this activity, whatever. You need flex time, and you need to be able to work remote. You can't do that working in an office.
Yeah, I think, and I also think for people that are disabled, the work from home boom has been a real boon to them, and I
Yeah.
think it's an interesting factor, and I think personally, as someone who has, worked from home and from a big expensive office, there's some real benefits from working at home, and there's some real benefits from working at the office. It's about finding the right match. I think track record is hard to fake.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And so that's a big part of it. And then having some kind of test period, I think, because I think there's a lot on the line. I mean, a good salesperson is going to be making a six-figure base. And, how long are you willing to let that go on to find out that maybe that person doesn't have the skills? Now, on
Well,
top of that, shouldn't you have some kind of training program in your sales training in your
you should
organization?
definitely have an orientation. You should have product training. Um, but you can't ask a recruit to quit a job, to take your job and work on a trial basis.
Right.
It's
No.
just not going to fly. If he knew that in advance, he wouldn't even interview.
So there's a
If it's
part
a,
of this is a leap of faith.
if it's an applicant, someone who's actually applied to you, unsolicited resume over the transom, or you posted a job and they responded and you put them through whatever you put them through, which I think is a lot of BS sometimes.
Yep, a little too
Um,
much.
yeah. Then maybe you could say, look, it's employment at will, and there's no promises that you're going to be here forever. And if we feel that you're not doing the job and can't do the job after a period of time, then we'll have to part company.
This is why I'm so against inflating your skill sets or your experience or your track record, because if you think about it, in a way you're getting this little short-term win, but and you're really losing the war. You're going to be that guy with 75 experiences on LinkedIn. Now I think this guy though he was counting like if he took a course from a company, that means he was trained by Google, or something like that. But so he was pushing it maybe a little bit. But yeah, I think the match is everything for the employer and the employee, uh, and be honest. I think in the sales field, we do have this is another trend that at least I see. You probably see it a little bit more than me, where people are really thinking it's a way to make really good money, and that's about as far as they've thought about it. And employers are kind of just thinking, hey, anybody that if they have a good personality, they can probably sell. Here's a phone book kid. That still goes on, right?
Yeah, to
At
some
bigger
degree.
companies than you think. And
Some of
so
those people just don't make it anyway.
yeah, that's true. But great topic. I think I'm glad to know you, and I would say feel free. You talk to people all the time just to answer questions, and you're a pretty laid back guy. I mean, you are an expert in this field, so I recommend that you talk to Peter. And thanks for sharing today. Some of these basic things, and I think that I think it's easy to. I think there's even more things that could be talked about. So maybe we do another one of these here in a few weeks, and
Yeah,
you know,
a lot we could have talked about if we could just stay on topic.
yeah, that's not our strength, is it? Really isn't. But anyways, thank you. We try to keep it to
Thank
about
you, Pete.
half an hour or so, and we'll be in touch. And if you want to stay on the line, you've been listening to Tell the Truth on LinkedIn live every Thursday at 11 a.m. Central. So I hope that you'll come and find us.